Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the starter set for Season 25 for the Necromancer, the Grace of Inarius set. Some people really like this set armor. There's not too many ways that you can play it where it's very effective for high tier, but there is one build that I think works tremendously well, that being the Corspe Explosion variation. Okay, so Grace of the Inarius. As you can see here, 2-piece bonus, bone armor damage is increased by 1000%. 4-piece bonus, bone armor grants an additional 3% damage reduction per enemy hit. 6-piece bonus, bone armor also activates a swirling tornado of bone, damaging nearby enemies for 100,000%. Or 1,000% weapon damage, and increasing the damage they take from the Necromancer by 10,000%. So as you can see, it's a bone armor set, so you're always going to want to keep and maintain your bone armor. So for the purposes of this build, you're going to be using primarily a full set of Grace of the Inarius. However, we are also going to be using certain things to supplement its damage. That being, first and foremost, we want a Convention of Elements ring. We need a Crispin sentence as well. We also want a lost time. This is going to come in tremendously handy for us. Subsequently, we are also going to want to use a, not really Grimthor's Marrow Guards, but you could use any bracer that has just a good amount of critical hit damage, because the Necromancer really relies heavily on it. For the necklace, I'm using a Haunt of Oxio. You could put a Flavor of Time here if you wanted to. Just make sure you get good stat rolls on it. Doesn't matter. Some people recommend that we use Brig's Wrath. I personally don't think it's a good idea to pull enemies towards you, because at higher greater rifts it will end up killing you, so I don't recommend it, but you could run it if you want. For the weapon, Tragol's Corroded Fang. The Curse Cipher Rune for Grimscythe now has a 100% chance to apply curses, and you deal 196% increased damage to cursed enemies. Dainty's Binding to help with this. You gain an additional 41% damage reduction when there is an enemy affected by any one of your curses. For the skills, we're going to use Grimscythe, Curse Scythe for primary. Secondary, Death Nova Blight. This comes in actually tremendously handy. You wouldn't even believe it on this build. Corspe Explosion, close quarters is the way you want to go with your Corspe Explosion ability. Blood and Bone, you want Blood Rush. Potency, that way you could just give yourself a little bit of armor. Land of the Dead, Frozen Lands, just to help us out if we have too many things swarming us and can't handle it. For Bone Armor, you want to run Dislocation, that way you could stun enemies every time you cast it, and you're going to be casting a lot of Bone Armor. For the passives, Stand Alone, you also want to run on your passives Blood is Power, because of the Blood ability where we're teleporting around. This kind of helps for that. That's why it's being used. Spreading Malediction. This will help tremendously as well for this, because we're using all curses. And Final Service. That way we can kind of cheat Death. For the Knight's Cube, Navarre's Black Death. Grasp of Essence. Wisdom of Kalan. I recommend tremendously Grasp of Essence and Wisdom of Kalan, because this is a bone armor set, and because you're going to rely on Corspe Explosions. For the follower, recommendation, Broken Crown, Flavor of Time, and Nemesis Bracers. That's why you don't see I'm running Flavor of Time and Nemesis Bracers on my actual character build. Grady's Flame is okay. Gloves of Worship is okay. There are things that you could possibly run. Homing Pads if you want to. And also Goldskin. Those are kind of helpful, but really the most important thing is the Broken Crown, Flavor of Time, and Nemesis Bracers, just because a follower passes these abilities to you, so that you don't have to use them in your build, and you could just use things with better rolls as you try to get other things available to you. Alright, for the purpose of this showcase, I'm going to show you guys how this does on a greater riff 60, then I'll probably do a 70, then I'll probably do a 75, and then we will wrap it up there. Now, as I mentioned before, this is the starter set for the Necromancer, so that means that you will have to complete your Chapter 2 free and 4 seasonal journey. You'll get a Hadred's Gift upon completion of Chapter 2, which gives you 2 pieces. Chapter 3 will give you another 2, and then Chapter 4 will give you the last 2. You're always guaranteed a full set. So, when you get into the Grey Rift, the first thing that you are going to want to make sure you do is cast your Bone Armor. Make sure you can get this as the high stacks as possible. From there, what you're going to want to do is use your Blight attack to be able to damage the enemies. As you see, whenever you use your Nova Blight, you'll be able to do a lot of damage. Then from there, if you're overswarmed by enemies, what you could do is either fire off your Corspe Explosion. If there's too many coming out to screen at the same time, what you're going to want to do is activate your Frozen Lands, Land of the Dead, and you will basically be able to get free Corspe Explosions from that. And then you would go back to activating your Bone Armor. Remember, get your 15 stacks as fast as possible. I would always recommend saving a corpse for when you see an elite pack around you, or the Rift Guardian. That way you can fire off your Corpse Explosion. But the damage rotations basically look like Bone Armor, Nova. From there, if there's bodies and you feel a need that you want to kill them that way, fire off your Corpse Explosion. Then go again, Bone Armor, Nova, Corpse Explosion. Every time that you're running low on your essence, what you're going to want to do is activate your Curse Scythe. Also, Curse Scythe is kind of helpful because remember, anytime an enemy is put under a curse thanks to Tragos Corrode effect, they take an increased amount of damage, and when you can pretty much add this up with the damage that Corpse Explosion is going to be doing and Blight, you're able to mitigate a lot of the damage there. One of the good things about this particular set is that we're going to have a lot of fast cooldown on here. The reason for that is that we are running a Go-Ak of Swiftness. That way we can get back certain things like Frozen Lands, Land of the Dead up super quickly. Primarily, I would say save your Frozen Lands unless you feel like you're really going to be overwhelmed. Whenever you are running out of resource generation, obviously you need to use your Curse Scythe. If you get a little too greedy here and you use too many Novas or too many Corpse Explosion, you run the risk of not having a lot of resource generation. So what you want to do is obviously you need to use your Grim Scythe. So damage rotations again, you want to always maintain your 15 stacks of Bone Armor. Then what you're going to do is use your Nova. Then from there, Corpse Explosion. Every once in a while, you're going to want to also swing your Curse Scythe, preferably, obviously, around elite packs because you could just increase the amount of damage that's going to happen to them. And pretty much rinse, or lava, rinse, repeat, lava, rinse, repeat, and those will be your damage rotations. Now, what should you be doing to further optimize this armor? Great question, my friends. Well, for starters, I would recommend cooldown reduction 8.0% wherever possible. Although we are not using, because there's no room for it, a Captain Crimson set in this particular build, it works in your benefit to have super fast cooldown because of Frozen Lands, Land of the Dead. It also gives you super fast cooldown for your Bone Armor so that you're able to maintain your stacks, and subsequently it will make your life a lot easier as you're going higher up in the Greater Rift. Next thing that you're definitely going to want to do for this particular build is use a Bane of the Trap. Get as high as possible, because remember, whenever we attack with our Frozen Lands or we use our Curse Scythe, we're applying status effects. Also, when you level up your Bane of the Trap past level 25, anytime you hit an enemy, there's a chance that you're going to automatically cast Slow, which in turn will work with the Lost Time offhand weapon that we are using. Subsequently, from there, the next thing you want to run is a Bane of the Stricken. If you don't have a Bane of the Stricken, because obviously you're playing in Seasonal and may not have the gem yet, what you could do is use a Bane of the Powerful, and then eventually you want to swap out when you see that you're not doing as much damage. It's more important, in my personal opinion, to have the Bane of the Stricken there, because as you go higher up in the Greater Rift, you are going to have to hit enemies for a tremendous amount of damage, so definitely keep that in mind. Subsequently, further optimization, anywhere where you can get resource cost reduction, 8.0%, definitely invest in that because it means that you're spending less resources to cast your Novas, which will help you tremendously as you're going further up in the Greater Rift. Subsequently, the next thing that you are going to want to do from there is on your helm, I recommend crit hit chance 6.0% because Necromancers rely heavily on high critical chance damage to be able to do the optimal damage outputs. On your gloves, I recommend these three stats: crit hit chance 6.0%, attack speed at least 7.0% or 8.0%, and then furthermore, I would recommend an attack speed at least of 7.0% to 8.0%. All three of those stats combined together will let you climb another 10 greater rifts generally easy without full optimization. Then from there, I would recommend looking into augmenting the power of your bone armor because it's kind of weak at first, and when you don't have all the pieces to this particular build, it can help you in seasonal just to get a little bit more damage out. Subsequently, I would say the rest of your damage should be going into Corpse Explosion because that's kind of where the meat and potatoes of things come, especially as you're going higher up where you're going to have to rely a lot more on the corpses to take out elite packs, and obviously the Rift Guardian. This can help you tremendously with that issue. So definitely anywhere you get Corpse Explosion 15% and Bone Armor, do so. If you have to choose one stat over the other, I would recommend probably Bone Armor because it definitely needs it a little bit more, and just regular passive damage from Corpse Explosion should be able to do enough damage anyway based on what we have in the Kanai's Cube. Subsequently from there, what you want to do is make sure that you get a good Tragos Corroded Fang roll. Make sure you get it where you can get the maximum percent of damage. Okay, Rift Guardians is very easy. What we do is cast a Land of the Dead, which will give us a free Corpse Explosion, and you just fire it off in that particular situation. If you had a lot of baddies around it, you wouldn't have to do it that way, but being able to freeze the Rift Guardian will help you, because remember, we're running Lost Time, Crispin Sentence. All these things add up on top of the Bane of the Trap legendary gem. So this is pretty much how the build works effectively. Further optimization, obviously, you would need to augment your armor pieces. How would you go about doing that? Every piece of your armor should be Ancient Legendary or Primal Ancient Legendary rarity. From there, you take a gem, any of these that you see here, level it up, and then you could use a Kunai Cube recipe to augment its power. For the Necromancer, you would basically be using free Flawless Emeralds, plus a level 80 gem is what I usually recommend. Anything higher, even better. And then you would take it, put it in the Kunai Cube with the legendary or ancient legendary piece, and that's how you augment an armor, in case these guys are wondering. That was Grey Rift 60, 5-minute clear time. This is not a speed farming type of armor. It's more of a push variation, which means its only goal is really to push towards the greater rifts. Again, this is your starter set build for the Necromancer, so in order to be able to get access to it, what you're going to need to do is complete your Chapter 2 Seasonal Journey. You got 2 pieces. Chapter 3 Seasonal Journey, you got another 2 pieces. Chapter 4 Seasonal Journey, you get the final 2 pieces. You are always guaranteed a full piece of your starter set. You are not guaranteed to get Ancient Legendary drops out of it, and you definitely will not be able to get Primal Ancient Legendaries, because the key requirement in Seasonal Journey for Primal Ancient Legendaries to drop is to be able to complete a Greater Rift 70, and you will need your starter set armor to be able to work towards that goal anyway, so it's never going to get a Primal Ancient Legendary from it. There is a possibility that you don't even get an Ancient Legendary roll with your starter set from the Hadron's Gift, so keep in mind that you may have to constantly farm for pieces of the armor to get better stats and better rolls. If you're new to Diablo 3 and this is your first season, keep in mind this one phrase that I tell to all my viewers on the channel frequently. When it comes to Diablo 3 and seasonal journeys and everything of the sort, this is a marathon, not a race. If you're trying to get to the end super quick and super fast, this might not be the game for you, because it's really a matter of getting good rolls, re-rolling, swapping out armor pieces, weapons, rings, necklaces, etc., etc., which can take a significantly long amount of time. That's why seasons in Diablo 3 go for quite a while. Now, my personal recommendation for this particular starter set is I would recommend using it till you get to about Greater Rift 70. Although this armor can do very well when fully optimized, it's going to require a lot of resources, and you are not going to get a super high leaderboard placement from it. Around Greater Rift 85 to 90, without maybe 2 augmentations, let's say, about 2 augmentations, you're probably going to start to see a significant drop-off in power. The problem really with the Grace of Inarius set, and I've said this before in previous videos, case in point, the 5,700 view one that a lot of you guys liked, is the fact that when it comes to Grace of Inarius, it does really well up until about Greater Rift 70, 75. Then around Greater Rift 80, what ends up happening is the Bone Tornado in particular starts to do less damage, and it starts to really just tickle enemies, particularly Greater Rift Guardians, on top of the Elite Packs. So what ends up happening is that it just starts dropping off in power. This is not something that you're going to be able to clear in a Greater Rift 150 solo, particularly. Maybe in a group of 4, but I wouldn't recommend it. Usually it starts to see its level cap in terms of how far it's going to go. Really around 85, 90 non-optimized. Then around fully optimized, probably around 120. Just because Bone Tornado starts doing a lot of damage, and you're going to have to rely a lot heavier on, you know, doing your damage rotations with Curse Scythe, Nova, and then Corpse Explosions. And there are going to be times where there's just not enough corpses on the ground to be able to do as much damage to take things out, and then you run into problems that way, which is where, even though this is a very good build and one of the ones that most people are going to recommend to you when running Grace of Inarius, that's where it kind of runs into its wall. Roughly, let's say Greater Rift 100, 110. If, you know, in a skill player's hand, you might be able to get to the 130 range solo, but I see it highly unlikely because, again, Bone Tornado, there's just not too many things you could do to increase its power. And as you see, it's not even really the main focus of this build, as it is more so Corpse Explosion. And there's only so much you can do to power up Corpse Explosion before you just don't have enough corpses, even with just Land of the Dead giving you free ones, to be able to really take this a step further. So Grace of Inarius, really, my opinion is you use it till you get to Greater Rift 70. By then, I would recommend that you swap out to either the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival build, which is the Bone Spear Necromancer build, as that requires less optimization and will be able to push a lot farther and a lot easier and a lot higher on the leaderboards for Season 25. Subsequently, you could also do the Legacy of Dreams Poison Sight build. However, that requires a lot of pieces and a lot more optimization, and you have to have like ancient legendary pieces of everything for that to work super effective. If you're interested in either of these builds, I have not done the Season 25 coverage of them yet. However, what you can do is look at the Season 24 videos, because all the information for both those builds still applies, as there has been no changes to it. Case in point, Grace of Inarius, still, there hasn't been any changes to this armor in quite a very long time. So it's kind of a little overdue for rework, maybe just to increase the amount of damage that Bone Tornado does in general. But, you know, it's only a matter of time will tell. As you saw there, we had Elite Packs form. We use our Corspe Explosions to do main source damage, swing our Curse Scythe. Always maintain your bone armor stacks. Since we're using Wisdom of Kalan and everything of the sort and Crispin Sentence, we can maintain 15 stacks, which means we can hold it for a lot longer. We take a lot less damage, and we're also going to be able to deal a lot more damage as well. That's why you always want to focus on maintaining that. But a very easy armor to use. So if you're a newer Necromancer player, this is probably one of the more easier setups that you can potentially do. The only other easier one, again, Masquerade of Burning Carnival, which I highly recommend if you're trying to be the most powerful Necromancer that you can be for Season 25. So Inarius would probably be somewhere around, some consider it B tier. I personally would consider it borderline bottom B to upper C tier type of armor. It's not as bad as the Tragul's Avatar set armor, which I don't even know what the heck they were thinking in terms of that with Blizzard, because that has long overdue for a rework. Ironically, the armor that did end up getting a little bit of a buff in Season 25 is the Bones of Rothbond set armor, which I will, in fact, be focusing on in the not-too-distant future. I was actually messing around with the build a little offline earlier, and it's better than what it used to be, but I still don't think it's the set armor that players are kind of hyping it up to be. They're kind of making it seem like it's S-tier armor, and no, it's somewhere in that B range, at least in my personal opinion, but I'm going to experiment a bit more with it offline to really be able to see how far a build can be taken with that. So if you're having trouble getting certain things in your seasonal journey, how should you go about farming? Well, my recommendation is, first off, do a ton of bounties. The reason for doing a ton of bounties is, A, you're going to get a lot of resources from the Tyrios Cache for every chapter, which will allow you to put more things in the Kanai's queue. It will enable you to do certain things with your followers, craft certain things for your followers that will help you get more depth breaths or more greater rift keys if you need. On top of that, it will give you a couple of blood shards that you need. On top of that, when you're running into, you'll run into goblins for or builds that you'll need certain plans for as well. So do a ton of bounties at first. Then I would recommend doing greater rift runs. I always say a good session of greater rift runs should be about 2 to 3 hours, where you're running for a greater rift, doing like 2 to 3 minute clear times, and you just constantly farm it that way. Some people recommend doing harder difficulties. I don't agree with that, because you can get a lot more items from doing 2 to 3 minute runs, and you can do a lot more runs than one very long run where you do maybe 4 or 5 runs in an hour. Okay, Rift Guardian, same thing. Land of the Dead. We used our Curse Scythe to apply a curse, and then fire off the Corpse Explosions, and it dies. Super easy to figure this one out. Very easy damage rotations, not super complex like the Jade Harvester set armor for the Witch Doctor, which is a starter set, which we will be covering in the not-too-distant future as well. We're going to be doing these starter builds again, so keep in mind it's not going to be like 3 times a week, but considering we're having a problem with the Fortnite right now on the channel in terms of my controller to stop working with it, chances are I'm probably going to pop out too. It was a Greater Rift 77-minute clear time. Again, this is a push build. It's not trying to go for speed farming, so results are always going to be on the higher end of the spectrum in terms of clear time. That's why I recommend for people who are doing their seasonal journey that you focus on, you know, investing in the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival Bone Spear build, because that one's going to do speed farming for you as well. So again, remember, just do a lot of bounties at first, so you can get a lot of materials. Also, you get a lot of death breaths that way. Then you focus on some greater riff runs. Then you go back to a couple more bounties, do some Nephilim runs, do some more greater riff things. And before you know it, you're going to start getting not only the pieces to make your Masquerade of the Burning Carnival, but at the same time, you'll also be able to swap out certain pieces of this particular build. Most of the stuff is going to drop fairly easy for you just doing a couple of hours of playing through the game. So it's not anything really that's too hard to acquire outside of like Ancient Legendary status for them. The hardest thing really on this build to acquire is a good Crisp and Sentence Ring, and maybe the Lost Time, although you could just go to the Merchant and just constantly roll your blood shards for that, or you could just use, if you farmed a lot of Death Breaths, you could just go and take some offhands that are rare, put them in the Kanai's Cube, upgrade the rare that way. Same thing for the Scythe, because Tragokorod Fang is a one-handed Scythe. There's not a large move pool of Scythes that are Ancient Legendary status or just Legendary status, so you have an easy chance of running into it. Because the only two really that drop that are, or free that'll drop is the Jessup Scythe from the Jessup set, the Scythe of the Sickle, which is the one that sometimes people like to use in this particular build to help their bone armor. I don't recommend it. Some people do. I think you're better off with the Tragos Corroded Fang because it just gives you more damage when you're using the Curse Scythe and everything of the sort. Again, it's a matter of personal preference, but I feel that this is the better way to go with the build. Keep in mind, it's a recommendation. That doesn't mean you have to play it exactly this way. There's going to be variations of the sort. Please don't link to any other content creator's work, because that's a little disrespectful to me as a content creator, and we have had that problem on the channel in the past, so please don't do that. So, I mean, first of all, I'm going to have to delete and stuff, so, but this is, again, my recommendation as to how you should probably play Grace of Inarius if you want to get it effective, and just be able to have a comfortable seasonal journey at the start as the Necromancer. Then, obviously, as you go and get more S tier when you go have to swap out certain things and so on and so forth, but this is a really solid foundation, in my personal opinion. We're using that, as you see, because we're on Greater 75, Torment 16 difficulty. Things get a little bit more heavy in terms of damage output. So, enemies have more HP, enemies deal more damage, they stay a bit more tanky, so you have to rely a lot more on using your Curve Scythes in conjunction with your Nova, and always maintain your bone armor stacks. And then, as you see, even now we start using our teleport ability, so that way we can increase the amount of armor that we have. But the damage rotation is new. I always recommend when you're getting this high up in the Greaters, don't waste your Land of the Dead. It might seem very easy and very comfortable to click it on, but obviously because it has such a tremendously long cooldown, even with Goraka's Swiftness, and you don't really want to invest on a lot of Flawless Diamonds to increase the cooldown on that because it's not the main draw for this set. It's better to hold your Land of the Dead as much as possible and rely on the Earth skills until you get to the Greater Rift boss, because the Grey Rift Guardian. Because Grey Rift Guardian is the one that's going to be giving you potentially the most trouble as you are pushing a little bit further. Upcoming on the channel next week, I'm going to be focusing on the rest of the starter builds for this season of Diablo III. So, as you saw here, the first two we did was Might of the Earth for the Barbarian. If you didn't check that video out, make sure you check it out. Available in the playlist. Now we did Grace of the Inarius. The next set armor that we are going to do is the Thorns of the Invoker set for the Crusader class. From there, we're going to move on to the Shadows Mantle set armor, which got a bit of a buff in this season. I was just playing that armor set offline earlier this morning, and I can tell you guys from the very start that the 6-piece bonus rework is pretty interesting. It's able to do a little bit more damage. It still needs work in terms of a set armor, but I think it's a step in the right direction, and it's a little bit more effective because of how much damage the Herb Blade's pulling. So that one's definitely, if you're a fan of the Demon Hunter, make sure you look out for that. That's going to be dropping, I'd say probably maybe Friday of this week, if not maybe Thursday. I might switch days. Again, like I said, Fortnite was originally on the schedule, but we're going to have to change things up a little bit based on the technical difficulties I've run into recently with that game. So 2 Diablo videos a week it's going to be for the time being. So those are the two things I'm going to work on. If there's a build that you want to see, particularly before another, definitely let me know in the comments and I'll get to them, because the starter sets are Grace of the Inarius, Might of the Earth, Sun Wuku set, which I'm not too thrilled that that's the star set for the monk, but hey, you work with what you got. Thorns of the Invoker for the Crusader, For the wizard, it's Firebird, which saw a little bit of a nerf, so we have to go back and look at that one. Grace of Inarius, which I just said. And for the barbarian was Mind of the Earth. And did we miss anyone? Oh, the Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor set is the Jade Harvester set. So those are the ones that we're going to be focusing on first. Then from there, what I will end up doing is we need to take a look at the embodiment of the Marauder, which I think is potentially the best kept secret of this season. The rework on the 6-piece and 4-piece bonus of it has made it a bit more centric to a sentry build. And what ended up happening was some very interesting and fantastic results. So definitely make sure to check out that one. And it does drop because I think that has a very high potential of climbing up in the tiers. Most people consider it a very low tier armor, but after the Sentry rework and considering what you can put into Kanai Cube to help augment that, and so was offhand, and if you change up the build a bit from the way I had it previously, it's going to be a top contender. Probably the most pleasant surprise of Season 25, in my personal opinion, so far. On top of that, Mortal Kings kind of got some buffs with certain things they can now use in the Kanai's Cube, so we're going to definitely take a look at that and experiment with that as Season 25 rolls around. This should be about a 7 or 8 minute clear time. Yeah. Oh, no, correction. 5 minute clear time. So as you can see, it still does pretty good and pretty fast clear. Depends, obviously, with lead pack placement and everything, the dungeon that you get. So that's Grace of the Nurse. Again, like I said, this is good. This will get you through 70, 75. I recommend then by greater of 80 that you start swapping out to the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival. You can check out the Season 24 build of that because nothing has changed from that to Season 25. However, I will be focusing on it in the future for Season 25. There's going to be a point where there's going to be a week where I just cover the S-tier builds. Keep in mind that I don't do Diablo videos every day of the week on this channel because this is a variety channel and I do play a wide variety of games. So chances are you're going to see probably about 2 Diablo 3 videos a week for the time being. Then maybe in the future I might go back to 3. Or it might drop to 1. You know, obviously, I always gauge my audience interest in certain things content. But again, keep in mind, variety channel. I do focus some on Diablo 3, but it's not always the main focus here. Okay, guys, so that's going to do it for today's Diablo 3 video. As always, a like on this video is greatly appreciated. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, definitely consider doing so as it helps the channel grow. And I will see you in the not-too-distant future. Till next time.